Hi, my name is Dennis Downing. I've written a collection of short stories called A Few Steps from the Grave. This is one of those short stories. Its name is Random Secrets. Random Lecter awoke with a terrifying scream. Was that me? He cried. His heart was jackhammering in his chest. Shards of broken glass swirled in his head, turning his brain into a curdled froth. He had been on a precipice and was surrounded by jackals, barking, growling, and laughing. They were laughing at him. They were laughing at his fate. He hadn't meant to stab her, or had he? Random dipped back into a dreamless sleep. There were no jackals. There was no precipice. Random, wake up, she said from the bedroom doorway. You overslept again. I'll have to open the store by myself. You worthless witch, he said softly so she couldn't hear him. Then he got out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom, where he turned on the shower. He always turned on the hot faucet. His brother-in-law had told him to set the water heater at 100 degrees, but he had set it at 120. The hot water didn't blister his skin, but it came close. He washed in the scalding water, then just stood in it until his skin was bright red. The pain fueled his anger. He arrived at the store an hour after it had opened. The hour after she had opened it. She had wheeled the wheelbarrow of flowers out in front of the store, along with the rack of seeds and fertilizer. She was ringing the customer up as he passed by. He could feel her cold anger. Random spent the morning stacking fertilizer and price marking 6 packs of tomato, pepper, and spice plants. Sally loved working with the plants. That's why she'd opened the store in the first place. Random worked with them so she'd have to man the register. He worked with the plants until noon. At noon he left and went to an Italian restaurant, where he took a leisurely lunch thinking of Sally working the register. He had left at 12 and didn't return until 1:30. Where have you been? She asked. Now I don't have time for lunch. He said nothing. He believed it was better to let her stew in her own juices. A little poison for the soul, he thought to himself, and smiled. It was the smile only an evil mind could render. Sally had invited her sister Susan and her brother-in-law Gary over for dinner. It was Friday night, and in Sally's family, Friday night had always been date night. Random detested date night. So by the time Gary and Susan arrived, he was gone. He spent the evening at Capone's, a bar on the south side. Hey, Al, Random muttered, how about a double jack? No ice? The stocky bartender grumbled back. You know me, Random muttered, seating himself on one of the bar stools. He had his choice. There was hardly anyone there. Capone's fell on hard times years ago. The only reason Al kept the place open was so he could drink free booze and take it off as a tax deduction. The bar was a dungeon. Light from bare bulbs carved the dim shadows throughout the barroom. Still thinking of killing the old lady? Al asked while rolling a cigarette. Thinking? Random detests Al. But who else was there to talk to? Al finished rolling his cigarette, licked it, poked it in between his lips, and lit it with a strike-anywhere match. For a brief moment, the flare of the match lit up Al's face, which was thin and hollow, with profound leathery wrinkles brought on by 50 years of heavy smoking. "I think you ought to shoot her some night in her sleep," Al said. "Too quick," Random mumbled. "Okay, how are you going to do it?" "Gopher poison," Random told him matter-of-factly. "How in the hell are you going to get her to eat gopher poison?" Al asked. Al had always thought these morbid discussions were hypothetical, something out of an Edgar Allan Poe short story. But tonight he believed what Random was saying. "It's tasteless, you moron. All they have to do is mix it in with her food." 50 years later. The old house is surrounded by clots of weed. 2 trees stand like scarecrows in front of the house. They have been dead for more than 10 years. The house itself is turning gray. It used to be white. The shingles speak of years of neglect. There is an overgrown path from the door of the house to the street where a decaying mailbox atop a leaning post rattles in the breeze. Chrissy and Randy Carter, the twins living 5 blocks down the road, call the old house Hannibal House, after the character in the 3 movies about Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter. They come up with the name after reading the rusty name on the mailbox, Random Lecter. The girls had seen the old man who lived in the house on occasions when he had come out to the rusty old mailbox. He was a malevolent creature with a hump in his back, long greasy hair, and tattered clothes. Inside that clump of hair was a prune face, shaped by years of hatred and deceit. The day was October 30th, one day before All Hallows Eve. The twins, 10 years old, were the perfect age to celebrate the night before the Day of the Dead. They were young enough not to be made fun of by the older kids, and yet they were old enough to go trick-or-treating by themselves. The girls were both going as witches. They decided to forego the rubber masks. Instead, they were going to paint each other's faces and wear pointy rubber noses. 50 yards from Hannibal House, someone had placed 2 ends of a broken stick on either side of a telephone pole, with the figure of a witch on the broom side. It was an old joke, but people still got a kick out of it. Chrissy and Randy had carved 3 pumpkins, 2 for their house, and 1 to put beside Random Lecter's malignant mailbox. They were going to place the Lecter pumpkin by the box just before dark, light the candle, and then go trick-or-treating. The girls could hardly wait for school to get out on All Hallows Eve day. They did their homework before dinner, so they could have time to put makeup on and prepare for the evening. By 7 o'clock, they were ready to go. The first item of business was placing the lit pumpkin in front of Hannibal House. After that, they planned on hitting the neighborhood at the both ends of the county road. The girls were told by their father to be back by 10. When they were trick-or-treating, they heard a faint scream in the distance. It was probably Mrs. Henderson. She played haunting CDs through 12-inch speakers every year. She had probably been the one to place the witch on the telephone pole. The screaming went on from 7 o'clock until 9. At 9:30, their bags full, the girls decided to head back to the house. They didn't think a good idea to leave the pumpkins in front of Hannibal House. The old man would surely think someone was making fun of him, and they hadn't meant to do that. The girls chatted and traded as they walked back to their house. "I'll trade you a Hershey bar for your Bubblicious," Chrissy told her sister. "I want my Bubblicious, but I'll trade you my sugar daddy," Randy said. "Sugar daddies get stuck in my teeth," Chrissy complained. "Mine too," Randy agreed. "That's why I wanted to trade." At 9:45 they arrived at Hannibal House. It was dark and malevolent. There were no street lamps in the block. The house looked like a cancerous tumor amid the weeds. Then they saw it, a body hanging from one of the trees. "Who would do such a thing?" Chrissy asked. "Bad taste if you ask me," Randy replied. "Maybe we should cut it down," Chrissy suggested. "I don't want the old man to see it in the morning when he goes to get his mail." "It's too high to reach," Randy said. "Somebody must have used a ladder to put it there." "Well, let's grab our pumpkin and head back to the house before Dad pitches a fit," Chrissy said. "Then I think we should wait for Mom and Dad to go to sleep and sneak back out here with the ladder and cut that thing down." "That sounds way too creepy," Randy declared. "You're the one who likes creepy," Christy told her sister. "I like creepy, but this is too much," Randy complained. "I agree," Chrissy said. "But we got to do this. We can't let that old man see it in the morning. He's probably 100 years old. We don't want the old guy to have a freaking heart attack." She could already imagine the old man coming out of his house and seeing that body hanging from his tree. What would he do? What could he do? He was too old and frail to cut it down. The body would probably hang there for months. It still might be there next year. "Okay," Randy told her sister, "but this is seriously scary stuff. This isn't like watching Friday the 13th, which I have watched with you at least 5 times. It's dark out there, and there are bad people out at that time of night. Real bad people, not the make-believe kind." So the twins went home to their parents, and they let them stay up till midnight watching scary stories on TV. They stayed awake in their room until 2 in the morning, waiting until they were positive their parents were asleep. When they were sure, they snuck into the garage and got their father's large rechargeable lantern and ladder and hedge shears. "I didn't like doing this," Randy said. "I don't like it either," Chrissy told her. "But what if we don't cut it down, who will?" "Okay," she said. "Let's get this done. The sooner the better." The walk wasn't so bad under the protective umbrella of the sodium vapor lamps. But once they ran out, it was black cat dark. No moon, just stars. And that lantern, of course. "Shine that light on it, and I'll stand the ladder up," Chrissy told her sister. The light stabbed the body hanging from the tree, while Randy fumbled with the ladder. "She couldn't pry it open," Randy had to put down the lamp to help her. Then a car appeared, and they had to douse the lamp completely. They waited for the car to pass. It had been a police car. If they had been seen, they would be in big trouble. The police would probably think they were the ones who hung the body from the tree. After the patrol car passed, the two of them spread the ladder and pulled it over next to the body. I'll man the light, and you do the cutting, Chrissy told her sister. Hey, you were the one that wanted to do this, Randy reminded her. You cut while I hold the light. And who's going to steady the lantern? Chrissy asked. We should have thought of that before we started. Randy hadn't wanted to do this in the first place. If she had her choice, they'd be home telling ghost stories and eating chocolate. Beside the discomfort of the entire thing, she was seriously scared. Not movie scared. Real, this is happening to me kind of scared. When Chrissy got to the third step, an owl crashed through the tree, going for a mouse or a rat, no doubt. Chrissy slipped and almost fell. Steady that ladder, she cried. I'm steadying the ladder, Randy defended. It's not my fault you slipped. I wouldn't have slipped if you hadn't moved, Chrissy complained. Would you just climb the ladder? Randy was crying. Chrissy resumed climbing, but climbing in the dark was making her dizzy. She didn't want to be out here any more than Randy. They were both afraid of the dark and afraid of heights. She would climb back down the ladder and head home, but now it was a matter of self-esteem. When she finally got to the top of the body, she asked for the shears. Again, she nearly fell, and Randy tried to hand her the shears. Steady the ladder, she cried. Do you want me to hand you the shears or steady the ladder? Randy asked, still crying. Both, Christy demanded. Randy cautiously handed the shears to her twin sister. Tears of fear were running down her cheeks, but she had no free hand to wipe them. She was having a difficult time seeing. Christy took the shears and tried to steady herself while she cut the rope. She thought she heard a scream in the distance. It was much too late for Mrs. Henderson's CD player. While Chrissy was cutting the rope, she nearly fell again. 3 times the charm, her mother would say to her. Quiet, Mother, she said. What did you say? Randy asked. The rope finally split. The body fell and banged against the ladder. Help, Chrissy cried as she fell to the ground. Are you all right? Randy asked urgently. I think I broke my arm, Chrissy squealed. Are you sure? Randy asked. Chrissy was busy puking in the weeds. Chrissy! It was just the sound of her sister tossing her cookies. Chrissy, this is a real body. Are you listening to me? This is a person, a real live... But he wasn't alive, was he? No. Random Lecter, full of shame and self-loathing for killing his wife 50 years before, this very night, this All Hallows Eve, had hung himself. Christy had broken her arm in 2 places. The police confirmed the body to be that of Random Lecter. There had been a note on the dining room table in Random's house. He admitted that he had poisoned his wife and buried her in the backyard. The twins swore they would never go trick-or-treating again. But the next year, All Hallows Eve found them walking down the very same road, carrying their father's lantern and the pair of hedge trimmers.